Transition seasons. In your journey of life, there will be those moments when you're coming out of one phase of life, getting into another, but you cannot quite figure out how the next phase looks like. It's a little confusing, it can get overwhelming, and for many of us, we don't know what to do in transition seasons. So, how do you successfully navigate transition seasons? What do transition seasons look like? That is what we'll be discussing in this and the upcoming episodes. My name is Coach Judy Mzungu Jabali. I am a Kingdom Life Coach, and my assignment is to guide individuals towards healing, finding their identity, and rediscovering the path to their purpose. So, how do transition seasons look like? First and foremost, remember that transition seasons could be anything. It could be you moving from childhood into becoming a teenager and not quite understanding how teenagehood would look like. It would be you transitioning from teenagehood into adulthood and not knowing what that journey would look like. It could be you coming out of school and trying to figure out going into college or university or whatever and just not knowing what that is going to be looking like. Or it could be you moving from one job and getting into another. Moving from employment into business. It could even be you sometimes losing a relationship and maybe transitioning from one relationship to another and not knowing how tomorrow is going to look like. It could be as beautiful as moving from singlehood into marriage. Yet, that transition, as exciting as it is, needs for you to be able to understand what transition seasons would look like. So, how exactly do transition seasons look like? Having then looked at some of the examples of transition. 1, transitions come with a degree of formlessness. You are used to your life having a certain form and structure. You're used to your life looking a certain way. You're used to a certain routine. As the transition season comes, it means that whatever routine that you had in the past is not going to work, and there'll be a moment at which you're trying to figure yourself out to be able to adjust to whatever it is that is coming next. And sometimes you don't even know what the next will look like. It's a place of formlessness. Nothing seems to make sense. There is no structure. Secondly, transition seasons come with a degree of darkness. Why? Because you have already formed your life around certain perspectives, around certain beliefs. You already know something about yourself. But all of a sudden, you're coming into a new season, or you know something new is approaching, but you cannot quite figure out what it's going to look like. It's a place of darkness. Because the former version of yourself that could be able to sustain your former season, all of a sudden cannot be able to sustain where you're going. And because of that, you will feel a degree of darkness. You will sense like, you know what, you're groping in the dark. You are unsure of how tomorrow looks like. There simply is no light. There simply is no direction. You're going through a transition. Thirdly, the transition season comes with a degree of emptiness. You will feel unfulfilled about where you have been. You will feel unfulfilled about life. You'll begin to feel like whatever was exciting you before, in the spaces where you could fit in the past, all of a sudden there's no excitement. All of a sudden there's no fulfillment. All of a sudden there's no zeal. There's no enthusiasm. What's going on? You are simply going through a transition season. Now let's settle it. Transition seasons can be very confusing. And the reason why we must begin to talk about transition seasons is that many times, many people confuse transition seasons for depression. Why? Because we don't talk about the seasons of transition. We don't talk about the challenges that come with moving from one level to another. We celebrate the move. We celebrate the new thing that is happening, but we don't know how to deal with the ending of the past season. So yeah, transition seasons are confusing. And why are they confusing? Think with me for a moment. You're used to holding on to something, and this thing is being taken away from you. But while it's being taken away from you, there is nothing that you can quite grasp so that you can be able then to move. So there's this season, there is this period where you have to kind of journey so that then you can latch onto what is coming next. So many times people think that when you're going from one level to another, it's like a stair, 1 and then 2 and then 3. It doesn't happen like that. This is how it happens. You go into one step and then that season comes to an end. When that season comes to an end, then there will be that moment where you kind of are unsure before now the next season unveils. Then again, you exhaust that season. And then again, you will go through a moment of a shakeup before that season ends and a new season now begins. We know how to celebrate new beginnings, but we don't know how to deal with the endings of the former season. Hence, the confusion that comes with transitions. But how do we typically deal with transitions, or how can we deal with transitions? Now, the reason why many people struggle with transitions is because you're dealing with the transition based on the failure of the past. So if, for example, you had faced a failure before, when the transition comes, you don't understand that, you know what, it's a season that is ending. And then begin to psychologically or even spiritually prepare yourself for whatever needs to come next, in as much as you cannot see it. So what usually happens is, if someone is operating maybe with a wound from the past, maybe they are dealing with past failure, they are dealing with past rejection or whatever, what tends to happen is that then they get stuck, they get paralyzed, because this transition season for them does not signal an ending of a season, or even does not signal a new beginning. For them, it signals yet another failure. How do sometimes people deal with transition seasons? Sometimes you enter into a season of aloneness, and this is how it happens. When you were used to the former season, you had company around you based on what you are going through. But now the season is changing, and the season is not changing for everyone around you. No, the season is only changing for you. So because the season is changing for you, in as much as you have company, you'll begin to feel like, I don't quite understand these people. They can't figure me out. Something is happening inside of me and I can't figure out life. And so you'll begin to isolate yourself. In that isolating yourself, if you don't understand, and if you don't have anyone around you who seems to understand, yes, you will think it's a depression. No, you're simply going through a transition. What else happens during a transition season? Your tastes will change. Your taste of maybe company, your taste of what you listen to. Maybe before you were okay with listening to certain kind of content, certain kind of things, but now something within you begins to change. You are used to entertainment, but all of a sudden, yes, entertainment is good, but all of a sudden you want to listen to maybe podcasts that are talking about more, personal development and all that. Is because your inner appetite is beginning to change to align with what is going on inside you. And maybe sometimes you'll also feel just a leaning towards spiritual things. And maybe people around you won't understand, but you're becoming spiritual. Yes, it's because now your spirit within you is beginning to hunger more for God, because that's what you need in this season to be able to transition. So, if you want to know how to successfully navigate, if you want to know how different people deal, join me in the next episode.